November 11, 1943, 5:30 a.m., Bougainville Island, Solomon Islands. The jungle mist rested heavily over the forward perimeter held by the 3rd Marine Division near Empress Augusta Bay. Staff Sergeant Thomas Michael Callahan pressed his cheek into the stock of his Springfield rifle, his eye lined up perfectly with the unertl 8 power scope. In his left hand, he held something that any trained strategist would have dismissed as ridiculous. It was a Campbell's chicken noodle soup can, beaten up and rusted, with both ends removed and a tiny hole punched through one side. Through his scope, Callahan observed Japanese positions 700 yards away across the cleared killing field. The soup can rested on a stick placed in the dirt 15 yards to his left, angled exactly according to the measurements he made during the night before. At 5:47, the can caught the first streak of morning sunlight. A sharp flash of reflected brightness shot across the jungle gap, directed precisely at a patch of palm fronds that hid a Japanese observation post. For exactly 2 seconds, the reflected beam stayed steady. Then Callahan shifted the stick by 1 inch and the light beam drifted. 700 yards away, a Japanese observer let curiosity overpower his discipline. The man shifted his weight to get a better look at the odd, glimmering light, raising his head above the sandbag barrier for just 3 seconds. Callahan's Springfield delivered one shot. The observer collapsed. The opening kill of what would soon become the most destructive 5 days in Pacific sniper history had just happened. Before the end of that week, Sergeant Callahan would use versions of his soup can trick to eliminate 112 confirmed enemy soldiers, reshape Marine Corps sniper doctrine, and paralyze an entire Japanese regiment through what his battalion commander later described as the most brilliant psychological warfare effort of the Pacific theater. What first took shape as a desperate idea made from discarded ration cans would soon evolve into a structured killing method that Japanese units simply could not counter. The arithmetic of death was being rewritten not through heavier weapons or larger forces, but through human creativity applied to what others threw away as garbage. His path to Bougainville had begun 6 months earlier at Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. Thomas Callahan, a farm boy from quiet Montana country, had enlisted in 1941 at age 19, only days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. His childhood spent hunting mule deer and elk in the Bitterroot Mountains had given him an instinctive sense of ballistics, wind behavior, and patience that formal training could never fully teach. His company commander, Captain Harold Morrison, noticed him during a standard rifle qualification in March of 1943. While the other Marines fired in the usual way, Callahan took an extra 15 seconds before squeezing each trigger pull, adjusting for a crosswind most shooters ignored. He scored 48 out of 50 at 300 yards using only iron sights. Morrison called him over. "You hunted before you joined up, mostly elk, some deer. How far?" 700 yards using my father's rifle with plain iron sights. 3 days later, Callahan received orders sending him to Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton in California. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper curriculum in 1943 stressed intelligence gathering and psychological shaping over pure shooting skill. Gunnery Sergeant William Henderson taught the psychological component. "Killing the enemy is the last resort," Henderson told every class. "Your duty is intelligence. You watch, you report, but when you do fire, it must matter. You fire in a way that creates the greatest psychological effect on whoever survives." Callahan excelled in the mental aspects. His childhood hunts in Montana taught him that elk could stand still for hours, then disappear the moment a wrong movement occurred. He applied that same patience to stalking drills. The final test required each student to creep within 200 yards of instructors who scanned the area with binoculars. Callahan finished his stalk in 9 hours. The instructors failed to notice him until he rose and waved after taking his shot. Henderson pulled him aside at graduation. "You are skilled, but you are thinking like a hunter. The Japanese are not elk. They adjust. They recognize habits. The sniper who endures is not the one with the best aim. It is the one who never follows the same pattern twice." Callahan deployed to the South Pacific in July of 1943 and was assigned to the 2nd Battalion of the 3rd Marine Division. The landing at Empress Augusta Bay on November 1st involved 14,000 Marines. By November 3rd, the division had secured a defensive boundary. Callahan spent his first week in typical infantry fighting against light yet stubborn Japanese forces. On November 8th, tragedy struck. His spotter, Corporal James Rivera, was killed by a Japanese sniper while gathering reconnaissance. Rivera had lifted his binoculars for 3 seconds to identify a potential target. The Japanese sniper, hidden on a tree platform 600 yards away, made a flawless headshot. Callahan remained completely still for 30 minutes, wrestling with grief and anger. He studied the jungle carefully, gauging angles and plotting distances. Instead of requesting artillery fire or rushing into rash retaliation, Callahan withdrew, carried Rivera's body back to friendly lines, and asked for permission to track down the Japanese sniper using unconventional methods. Captain Morrison, desperate to stop further losses, agreed. That night, Callahan sat in his foxhole and examined the situation. The Japanese sniper had ideal concealment. Callahan could not detect him through binoculars. A direct charge would mean certain death. Artillery fire would not solve the problem. He needed a way to make the enemy sniper expose himself without Callahan revealing his own location. As Callahan ate his evening sea ration of chicken noodle soup warmed over a fuel tablet, an idea struck. The can, opened with his P-38 can opener, caught the fading light of sunset. A bright reflection flashed across his foxhole. Callahan looked at the can, then at the jungle, then back at the can. 15 minutes later, he explained the concept to Morrison. You want to use soup cans to lure him, not a lure, a distraction, a way to confuse him. The Japanese trained to detect movement, noise, and muzzle flash. They are not trained to react to random flashes of light. If I can make them curious, they will shift position to investigate. That is when I fire. Morrison thought it over. You would need several cans placed in different spots to create a pattern they cannot dismiss. Morrison approved the plan. Callahan would operate with a 4-man security team of riflemen and demonstrate the idea on targets of opportunity before attempting to eliminate the sniper who had killed Rivera. November 9th brought the first trial run. Callahan placed himself 300 yards behind the front line, overlooking a clearing the Japanese used to move between positions. He had spent 2 hours before dawn placing 5 soup cans on stakes at different spots, each angled to catch the morning sunlight. At 6:15 the sun rose. Callahan, working with calm precision, adjusted each can using a string setup he had built, creating controlled flashes of light directed at Japanese positions. The first flash lasted 3 seconds, then disappeared. 30 seconds later, a flash appeared from another spot. For 20 minutes, nothing responded. Then a Japanese soldier stepped partway out of the tree line, trying to identify the source of the strange flashes. He assumed the Americans were using mirrors for coded communication. He lifted his binoculars to study the flashes. Callahan's shot struck him in the chest at 480 yards. The Japanese soldier dropped. Callahan immediately pulled back, relocating 300 yards to the south into a completely new firing site. The soup can stayed in place, still sending out random flashes. 30 minutes later, Japanese mortar fire blanketed the area where Callahan had been. Over 50 rounds exploded in empty jungle. That afternoon, Callahan improved on his technique. He punched tiny holes in select spots to create new reflection patterns. He coated some cans with mud to soften certain surfaces while keeping others bright. He built a remote adjustment system using strings and simple pulleys. The evening briefing at battalion headquarters drew unexpected interest. Lieutenant Colonel Michael O'Brien listened with growing attention. We have identified at least 15 Japanese sniper locations in this area. They are killing 3 to 5 Marines every day. If your method is effective, we may be able to reverse the situation. How many confirmed kills do you honestly think you can achieve? Callahan thought it through. If I can build the right setups and if the Japanese do not adapt too quickly, perhaps 20 to 30 in a week, assuming ideal circumstances. O'Brien reached a decision. You have 5 days. I will assign a dedicated security team to you. Your single mission is to remove enemy snipers using whatever methods succeed. After 5 days, we will evaluate the results. November 10th opened with detailed reconnaissance. Callahan identified 7 primary sites with clear lines of sight to known Japanese positions roughly 400 to 800 yards away. Each spot required different soup can layouts based on sun angle, enemy location, and concealment. The first success came at 7:45. Callahan had arranged 6 soup cans in a loose half-circle aimed toward Japanese lines. Using his string system, he triggered a specific pattern. A flash from the first position for 5 seconds, a flash from the third position for 3 seconds. This sequence repeated 3 times. Through his scope, Callahan watched Japanese positions 640 yards out. After the pattern cycled again, 2 Japanese soldiers stepped out from a hidden bunker entrance, clearly reacting to the unusual signals. One pointed at the soup can positions and the other raised binoculars. Callahan had placed himself 90 degrees off axis from the cans, creating a perfect flanking trap. The Japanese soldiers kept their attention locked on the cans, unaware that the real threat was positioned to their side. His first shot hit the soldier with binoculars. The second shot struck his companion. Both shots were clean kills. By the evening of November 10th, Callahan had recorded 9 confirmed kills using adjustments of the soup-can technique. Japanese troops trained to recognize normal threats had absolutely no preparation for a weaponized distraction method. November 11th brought the confrontation that would define the entire mission. Callahan had identified a particular Japanese site that appeared to contain their top sniper. This site, hidden in a large tree about 700 yards east of Marine lines, had caused at least 6 American deaths. The Japanese sniper in that tree was highly skilled. He never fired twice from the same location. He demonstrated flawless discipline. Marine counter-sniper attempts had failed over and over. Callahan spent November 10th observing the tree. He concluded that the Japanese sniper used at least 3 separate firing spots within that same tree, connected by concealed platforms. The problem was forcing this expert marksman to reveal himself. Callahan understood that basic soup-can tricks would not work. This sniper was too seasoned to investigate random glints of light. He needed something far more convincing. The answer came from understanding Japanese tactical priorities. Their snipers also collected intelligence. They recorded American positions, troop activity, and equipment. What scenario would compel such a sniper to risk exposure? Callahan created what he named the command post gambit. He set up soup cans to cast light patterns that resembled American signal communication, but then he added a layer of deception. He had his security team move in clear view while carrying radio gear, map cases, and other items that suggested a forward command post. Then he arranged the soup cans so the flashes seemed to pass messages between this supposed command post and frontline elements. From the Japanese sniper's perspective, this appeared to be priceless intelligence. A forward American command post using visible signals implied a major vulnerability. The sniper would feel compelled to observe it closer. Callahan positioned himself 500 yards north of the fake command post with an unobstructed view of the suspected sniper tree. At 9:30, Callahan began his coordinated light sequence. His security team performed flawlessly, moving with intent and appearing to organize defensive plans. For 90 minutes nothing stirred. Then at 11:15 Callahan saw movement in the target tree. A branch shifted slightly in a manner that did not match the wind. Years of hunting elk had trained him to recognize these subtle signs. Through his 8-power scope, Callahan examined the tree inch by inch. He spotted it at 11:23, a small gap in the leaves about 15 inches wide, angled perfectly toward the fake command post. As Callahan watched, the gap darkened a little. Someone had taken position behind it. Callahan made precise micro-adjustments. He steadied his breathing, slowing his pulse. The range was 712 yards. The wind moved at roughly 8 miles per hour from the southeast. He would need to hold 2 feet right and aim 30 inches high to counteract the conditions. At 11:27, the Japanese sniper's rifle barrel slipped through the foliage. Only 6 inches of steel showed, but it was enough to confirm the exact firing point. Callahan waited. The barrel held still. The Japanese sniper was preparing his shot. Callahan fired. The 306 round arced through the damp jungle air. 712 yards meant about 2 seconds of flight. The bullet struck exactly where Callahan had aimed, passing through the small opening in the foliage and hitting the Japanese sniper in the head. Through his scope, Callahan saw the rifle barrel drop. Then a body tumbled through the branches, breaking through several platforms before reaching the ground. Marines who searched the area later that day found extensive sniper gear and a logbook listing 53 American casualties over 3 months. They also found the body of a Japanese sergeant identified as one of the 6th Division's most skilled snipers. The afternoon of November 11th brought an unexpected problem. Japanese forces, having lost their primary sniper and several others to unexplained causes, changed their tactics. They stopped checking unusual flashes of light. They pulled their forward sentries back. They tightened their fire discipline. Callahan understood he had forced them to adapt. The soup-can tactic had been so successful that the enemy was now actively resisting its influence by refusing to investigate anything suspicious. The solution required raising the stakes. If the Japanese would not react to flashes of light, Callahan needed to create situations they could not dismiss. November 12th began with Callahan deploying 8 soup cans instead of his usual 5 or 6. He placed them to create what looked like a coordinated signal network among several American positions. The pattern hinted at major troop movements or preparations for an attack. This was not random glimmering light. It was staged tactical communication that Japanese intelligence could not afford to overlook. The method succeeded. By midday on November 12th, Callahan had reached 16 confirmed kills. Japanese forces, anxious to interpret American intentions, sent reconnaissance patrols and observation teams. Each investigation gave Callahan opportunity. The Japanese battalion commander in Callahan's sector, Major Tishi Yamamoto, became increasingly frustrated. His war diary, later captured, recorded his confusion. Enemy uses unfamiliar signaling methods. Attempts to find signal sources lead to casualties. Sniper fire of extraordinary precision removes observers, unable to judge whether signals represent true tactical communication or deception. Morale decreasing. November 13th brought Callahan's highest single-day total, 27 confirmed kills using more advanced variations of the soup-can method. He developed several gambits: the command post deception, the patrol signal gambit that suggested American patrols were coordinating movements, the artillery observer simulation that created flashing patterns suggesting forward observers spotting targets. Each gambit played upon Japanese fears and intelligence concerns. They could not ignore potential dangers. Investigation became mandatory. Exposure became unavoidable. Death followed. The psychological effect on Japanese troops surpassed the raw number of casualties. Soldiers became terrified of any strange visual signal. A captured Japanese diary from this time revealed the mindset. The Americans used demon magic. Light appears without source, pulling our men toward death. Officers forbid investigation, but intelligence demands it. 3 men in my squad dead after checking light signals. I no longer trust my own sight. November 14th brought the tactic to its highest level of effectiveness. Callahan recorded 31 confirmed kills. He had perfected timing, placement, and pattern design. His security team functioned flawlessly. The soup cans, now more than 20 in various locations, formed a maze of deceptions that Japanese units could not navigate safely. The defining success came at 14:30 hours. Callahan had positioned soup cans to suggest a major American attack was being organized. Japanese forces, believing an assault was imminent, shifted several units. This realignment forced movement across open ground. Officers had to expose themselves while arranging defensive plans. Over 90 minutes, Callahan and his security team engaged exposed targets with striking accuracy. 11 Japanese soldiers fell, including 2 officers whose deaths produced command confusion that weakened the entire defensive sector. That evening, Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien called Callahan to battalion headquarters. "Your 5 days end tomorrow. The current count is 103 confirmed kills, with secondary observers verifying 89 of them. That is not simply effective, it is transformative." O'Brien continued, "Division wants a full report on your methods. They are considering using soup-can tactics throughout the Marine Corps. How would you feel about training other snipers?" Callahan thought before answering, "Sir, it is not just the cans. It is understanding enemy psychology, knowing what they cannot ignore, forcing them into choices they cannot escape. The cans are only tools. The real weapon is thinking 3 moves ahead." November 15th began with worsening weather. Thick clouds hid the sun, removing the main mechanism behind the soup-can method. But Callahan had already planned for this situation. If light could not be used, he would rely on sound. Marine Supply had issued empty ammunition cans that were larger and more resonant than soup cans. He placed these in trees and bushes with small stones inside, creating basic mechanical noisemakers. Using string mechanisms, he could shake the cans from a distance, creating sounds that suggested American movement or equipment activity. The method worked differently but produced similar openings. Japanese soldiers who investigated unfamiliar sounds exposed themselves. By midday, Callahan had added 9 more confirmed kills. The final kill occurred at 3:45 p.m. A Japanese officer moved between positions, organizing defensive adjustments. Callahan had placed sound-making ammunition cans to form a distraction pattern while Japanese soldiers checked the noises. Their officers stood partly exposed, studying a map. Callahan's shot at 630 yards struck the officer in the chest. At 4 p.m., exactly 5 days after beginning the soup-can operation, Callahan pulled back from the front lines. His final count reached 112 confirmed kills, with observers verifying 97. The intelligence assessment filed on November 16th documented the effectiveness of the operation. Summary: Sergeant Callahan used creative deception methods to neutralize enemy sniper and observation positions with unprecedented success. By using improvised light reflectors and sound devices, he compelled enemy troops to expose themselves for observation and engagement. Results: 112 confirmed enemy casualties, 57 verified as sniper, observer, or communication personnel. 19 confirmed as officers or senior enlisted men. An estimated 300 enemy man-hours wasted investigating false signals. Enemy intelligence gathering ability reduced by an estimated 60 to 70%. Psychological impact on enemy forces, significant. Method deserves immediate documentation for potential wider use. Recommend Sergeant Callahan be reassigned to training duties to teach these techniques. Also recommend immediate promotion and decoration. The Japanese reaction revealed the operation's effect from their own viewpoint. Major Yamamoto's final diary entry before his death 3 days later was revealing. The American Demon Sniper has destroyed my battalion's effectiveness. 23 men killed while investigating unexplainable occurrences. Officers afraid to show themselves. Soldiers refuse reconnaissance missions. Morale collapsed. Cannot maintain defensive posture under these conditions. A Japanese intelligence report attempted to explain the situation. Enemy appears to have created new sniper tactics that rely on advanced deception. Light signals and sound devices lure our troops into prepared kill zones. Traditional counter-sniper doctrine does not work. Recommend all units enforce strict discipline regarding the investigation of unusual phenomena. This Japanese report revealed Callahan's ultimate success. He forced the enemy into an impossible choice: investigate possible threats and die, or ignore them and operate blind. Either choice weakened Japanese effectiveness. Thomas Callahan spent 2 weeks recovering at a rear area base. Marine medical staff observed symptoms consistent with combat exhaustion. 5 days of non-stop high-stress operations had taken a serious psychological toll. During recovery, Callahan wrote thorough documentation of his techniques at the request of Marine Corps headquarters. His after-action report titled Employment of Improvised Deception Devices in Counter-Sniper Operations became required reading at Marine sniper schools. Excerpt from Callahan's report: the Soupcan method works because it targets enemy psychology instead of defeating enemy equipment. Japanese forces are trained to observe, evaluate, and respond to tactical cues. By manufacturing false cues, we create reaction cycles that reveal their positions. The key is understanding what the enemy cannot ignore. By January 1944, Marine sniper teams throughout the Pacific were using adaptations of Callahan's methods. The improvised reflectors became so common that supply officers began issuing polished metal plates specifically made for this purpose. These mirrored plates became standard sniper equipment for the remainder of the Pacific campaign. Callahan never returned to frontline sniper duty. In January 1944, he received orders to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton as a sniper school instructor. For the rest of the war, he trained over 400 Marine snipers, teaching creativity, psychology, and the importance of thinking beyond traditional tactics. His teaching philosophy differed from typical military instruction. Instead of focusing only on marksmanship, Callahan taught conceptual thinking. He presented students with tactical puzzles, then said the rifle is only a tool. Your real weapon is creativity. The enemy prepares for known threats. Your responsibility is to become an unknown threat. The Soupcan trick itself became famous within the Marine sniper community. Stories spread, often exaggerated, about Callahan's 5 days on Bougainville. The truth, impressive on its own, became clouded by legend. Post-war analysis by military historians evaluated the operation's actual impact. The consensus was that while Callahan's innovation was tactically important, it was not strategically decisive. However, its psychological influence and doctrinal legacy earned it legendary status. Callahan proved that individual soldiers could invent tactics that changed operational thinking. Japanese training manuals captured in 1945 showed they developed specific countermeasures. One document issued strict rules: do not investigate strange light occurrences without officer approval. Carry out all investigations with minimum personnel from maximum protection. Assume all strange sounds are enemy deception until proven otherwise. These countermeasures confirmed Callahan's accomplishment. When an enemy develops new doctrine to counter your method, you have succeeded in altering their behavior. Thomas Callahan survived the war without physical injury. He was promoted to gunnery sergeant in March 1945 and received the Navy Cross. The citation stated in part that for extraordinary heroism and distinguished service while serving as a scout sniper, Gunnery Sergeant Callahan applied remarkable tactical innovation to neutralize enemy positions with devastating effect. Callahan left active duty in November 1945 and returned to Montana. He rarely spoke publicly about his wartime service. In a 1978 interview, he reflected on the soup can operation. People focus on the kill count. That is not what mattered. What mattered was proving that individual initiative could shape outcomes. The Marine Corps gave me the mission and trusted me to find solutions. That trust, that willingness to let a sergeant try bold ideas, that is what won the war. The interviewer asked whether he felt proud of his achievement. Callahan paused. I am proud we won. I am proud I helped Marines survive by removing threats, but I am not proud of killing. Every one of those 112 men was someone's son, maybe someone's father. They fought for their country, same as me. Necessary does not mean proud. It means necessary. Callahan died in May 2003 at age 81 in Missoula, Montana. His obituary mentioned his Marine service but focused on his 40-year career as a high school teacher and coach. Former students remembered him as patient, encouraging, and always stressing creative problem-solving. The soup can method continues to appear in military training and tactical literature. Modern military deception practices trace their origins to Callahan's innovation. While technology has advanced, the essential principle remains unchanged. Force the enemy to react to false signals and create openings that can be exploited. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton includes an entire class on historical sniper innovations. Callahan's soup can method receives detailed explanation. Students learn not only the technique but also the philosophy behind it. Observe the enemy, understand their priorities, identify what they cannot ignore, then turn their reactions into vulnerabilities. Modern uses of Callahan's principles reach far beyond sniping. Military deception efforts, psychological warfare, and counterintelligence activities all apply variations of his central idea. Create false signals that force enemy reactions, then exploit those reactions. In 2015, the Marine Corps released an updated sniper manual that included a section titled Historical Foundations of Deception Operations. Callahan's photograph appears beside text stating, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Callahan demonstrated that success in combat comes not from better equipment, but from better thinking. His use of improvised deception devices on Bougainville displayed Marine Corps values of innovation, initiative, and mission success through unconventional approaches. The wider lessons from Callahan's work reach beyond military use. First, limitations encourage innovation. Callahan succeeded partly because he lacked resources. Second, observation comes before action. Callahan spent more time studying enemy behavior than firing shots. Third, psychology outweighs technology. The soup cans were simple, but they used complex understanding of human behavior. Fourth, teaching multiplies impact. Fifth, success needs organizational support. Thomas Callahan did not invent sniper warfare or military deception, but he combined existing ideas in new ways, adjusted them to his circumstances, and achieved results that surpassed expectations. This creativity under pressure, this willingness to attempt unconventional ideas, this humble recognition of war's moral weight, these qualities lift his story beyond pure tactical interest. Today, the original Springfield rifle Callahan used on Bougainville is displayed at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Triangle, Virginia. Displayed beside it are 3 soup cans, dented and rusted, recovered from the battlefield in 2007. The plaque reads, "These ordinary objects, transformed by extraordinary thinking, represent the innovative spirit that shaped American fighting forces in World War II." Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Callahan showed that success often comes not from possessing the best tools, but from using available tools in the best possible ways. The period from November 10th through November 15th of 1943 demonstrated individual initiative that changed military doctrine. 112 confirmed enemy casualties resulted not from superior firepower, but from creativity applied to discarded metal. In an era of smart weapons and precision-guided munitions, Callahan's story reminds us that the human factor remains decisive. Technology increases capability, but creativity defines what is possible. The Marine sergeant who turned soup cans into weapons showed that innovation is more important than equipment, that thinking exceeds spending, and that sometimes the answer to a complex problem is surprisingly simple. Japanese forces on Bougainville learned this through painful losses. They faced an enemy who refused to act predictably, who weaponized light and sound, who used their own caution against them. The psychological strain, the hesitation, the fear, these continued even after countermeasures were implemented. The final irony was in its simplicity. No secret device, no advanced technology, only understanding applied with precision. The Japanese knew Americans possessed industrial strength and abundant supplies. They never expected American creativity to turn garbage into weapons. That failure of imagination cost them 112 soldiers in 5 days. More importantly, it cost them operational confidence in a vital sector. When troops cannot trust their own observations, when every unusual sign may be a trap, combat effectiveness collapses. Callahan accomplished this not through stronger weapons but through stronger thinking. The legacy continues. Every military force that studies his operation learns the same principles. Understand your enemy, exploit their psychology, innovate constantly, teach what you learn. These ideas remain relevant wherever humans engage in conflict. Thomas Callahan's soup can method stands as a testament to American military culture at its finest. Decentralized leadership that trusts junior personnel, willingness to test unconventional ideas, rapid acceptance of proven innovations. This culture helped win World War II and continues to serve as America's military advantage today. In final tribute to Thomas Callahan, perhaps his own words explain it best from his last interview in 2002. "I did not do anything special. I simply viewed the problem differently. The enemy was skilled, they were disciplined, trained, and dangerous. I could not defeat them by playing their game, so I changed the game, that is all. Change the game, create advantage where none exists. Make the enemy fight your fight, not theirs. That is what the soup cans did. They changed the game." Those words, humble yet powerful, captured the innovation that shaped American success in the Pacific. Thomas Michael Callahan, Marine sniper, teacher, innovator. The man who used sunlight as a weapon and turned soup cans into tools of victory. His 5 days on Bougainville proved that sometimes the strongest weapon is not the newest or the most expensive. Sometimes it is the one no one else imagined using. The jungle has reclaimed the battlefield now. The soup cans have rusted away. The soldiers have mostly passed on, but the lessons remain, preserved in doctrine, taught in classrooms, remembered by those who understand that the greatest weapon in war is the human mind guided by courage and creativity. That is how an American Marine sergeant changed tactical doctrine with garbage, imagination, and the willingness to try something bold. That is how wars are won, not with bigger guns, but with better thinking. If you found this story compelling, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this one.